Imagine waking up in the morning to hear blood-curdling screams echoing through your village. You rush toward the sound, only to find yourself staring at a scene so horrific. Your mind can't process it. Torn bodies, shattered skulls, slit stomachs, and entrails scattered everywhere. But it doesn't stop there. Next to each victim, there are slaughtered animals, pigeons drenched in blood, as if part of some dark, ritualistic ceremony. Today we're diving into one of the most gruesome crimes in Egyptian's history. A crime that claimed the lives of 10 people, including children. They were all killed in the same brutal manner, inside their own homes, with no trace of the killer, no clear motives, no theft, no witnesses. It was as if a ghost carried out the massacre, then vanished without a trace. Pay close attention, cause you're about to step into one of the most horrifying and controversial crimes ever. On a quiet January night, 2005, the village of Shams el-Din was enveloped in complete silence. No one in the village had imagined that the next few hours would turn the calm of the night into a terrifying nightmare. A nightmare whose scars would remain etched in everyone's memory for decades. It all started down when Abdul Majid left his house, as he did every day to go to the mosque for a prayer. He waited for his brother Taha to join him, but Taha never showed up. Abdul Majid found it strange, but didn't think much of it at first. He figured Taha might have been tired or overslept. After prayer, he decided to head to his mother's house, where he and Taha usually had breakfast together. As he approached the house, he noticed the lights were still off. He paused at the door for a moment, hesitant. The air was eerily quiet. When he stepped inside, he caught a strange smell, something he couldn't quite place at first. But when he opened the door, his breath caught in his throat. What he saw was something out of a nightmare. His mother lay on the floor, drenched in blood. Her stomach slit open, and her entrails split out around her. For a moment, he thought he was hallucinating, or maybe trapped in a waking nightmare. But he wasn't dreaming. He tried to move closer, but his feet were frozen in place. He looked around, his eyes widening in horror as he saw the second shock. His brother Taha slumped in the corner, his head brutally smashed, and his stomach torn open in the same horrifying way. At first, he couldn't scream. The shock of the scene seemed to paralyze his voice. But after a few moments, a deafening scream tore from his throat, shaking the entire house. He stumbled outside, gasping for air, and collapsed unconscious. The neighbors heard his screams and rushed to the house, but as soon as they entered, silence fell. One man fainted at the sight, while others covered their faces, unable to look at the mutilated bodies. But was this the end of the story? Of course not. At the same moment, just a few meters away, another scream rang out, this time from a neighboring house. Everyone rushed toward the sound, only to find the same scene repeating itself. The family of Mahmoud Abdo had suffered the same gruesome fate. Mahmoud, his wife Sabah, and their two children, Ahmed 10 years old and Fatima 8 years old, were all killed in the same horrific manner. Skulls smashed, stomachs slit open, entrails spilled out, and next to each body lay a dead pigeon, as if a part of eerie ritual. At that moment, the village turned into a theater of terror. No one understood, no one could believe it, and no one knew who would be next. The cries of weeping women grew louder. Children hid behind their parents in fear, and the men stood in heavy silence, unable to process the nightmare unfolding before their eyes. But hey, this wasn't the last house. That morning, Muhammad Yahya, a middle school student, had spent the night at his grandmother's house. He woke up early to head to school, but decided to stop at his parents' house to grab some books. As he approached the neighborhood, he noticed a large crowd gathered near his home and heard people talking about a murder. He didn't understand what was happening, but rushed to the house to check on his family. He knocked on the door several times, but no one answered. He pulled out his key and opened the door. The moment he stepped inside, he was met with a horrifying scene. His father, mother, and two younger siblings were lying in pools of blood. He couldn't comprehend what he was seeing. He collapsed to the ground, screaming hysterically as neighbors rushed in. Within minutes, the shock deepened. The death toll had risen to 10, spread across different locations, all killed in the same brutal manner. Terror gripped the village. Some ran home to make sure their families were safe, while others stood frozen in fear. The police arrived to begin investigating on one of the strangest crimes the region had ever witnessed. The bodies were all in the same position, entrails torn out, skulls smashed, and genitals mutilated, even the children. But the most chilling detail, next to each victim lay a slaughtered pigeon, matching the victim's gender. A male pigeon next to the man, and a female pigeon next to the woman. Rumors began to spread like wildfire. Some said it was related to dark rituals, sacrifices to the devil for treasure, or to open a pharaonic tomb. Others whispered about organ trafficking ring. In moments, the village descended into chaos. Everyone was asking, what's happening? Who did this? And why? When the police arrived at the crime scene, the officers moved slowly, led by the lead investigator. At the threshold, one officer paused, glanced at his colleagues, took a deep breath, and stepped inside. Despite his years of experience, this was a scene he wasn't prepared for. The air was thick with the smell of blood. The bodies were not just killed, they were carefully arranged, as if the killer wanted to send a clear message. The scene was unnerving. It felt like the bodies were placed in specific pattern, not just victims of a random, chaotic murder. But the strangest part, there were no signs of struggle, no overturned furniture, no blood splattered across the room. It was as if the victims hadn't realized they were in danger until the very last moment. The police began examining the scene meticulously, but the mystery only deepened with every step. They found no signs of forced entry or disturbance in the furniture, nothing to suggest the killer had to break in. The house was crowded with people when the police arrived, making it impossible to lift any useful fingerprints. Yet, there was no doubt that whoever carried out the massacre wasn't an ordinary person. It was someone, or perhaps a group, who knew exactly what they were doing. As the bodies were examined, even stranger details emerged. All the victims had been stabbed in the exact same spot, the abdomen, with the same depth and precision, as if a skilled surgeon carried out the killings, not a random murder. The wounds were precise, identical, with no hesitation or confusion, suggesting a high level of expertise and calmness during the act. At first, the investigators suspected the motive might have been theft, but after searching the homes, they found nothing missing. Jewelry, money, electronics, everything was in its place. So, could it have been organ trafficking? The forensics report, however, revealed another surprise. No organs had been removed from the bodies, and there were no attempts to do so. So why the brutality? And why were their genitals mutilated? As the hours passed, strange clues began to surface. Some witnesses mentioned an ambulance that had been roaming the village a week before the massacre. It had stopped at certain houses, claiming to be a part of a medical campaign to collect blood samples for the Ministry of Health. At first, it didn't seem suspicious, especially since the people visited by the ambulance hadn't complained or experienced anything unusual until the massacre happened. After the crime, villagers noticed something odd. The houses visited by the ambulance were the same ones where the massacre took place. This couldn't be a coincidence. As suspicions grew, the police contacted the Ministry of Health to verify the claims. The response was shocking. There had been no medical campaign sent to the village. The ministry hadn't dispatched any team, and no similar activity had been reported in the area. This discovery opened new doors of suspicion and raised even more questions. Was the ambulance just a way to scout the victims before killing them? Or was the purpose of collecting blood samples more sinister. The police, on their part, were trying to calm the situation, but they were under immense pressure from the public and media. Everyone wanted answers, but nobody had them. The investigation was moving slowly, and the leads were becoming tangled instead of clear. 5 days into the investigation, the authorities held a press conference announcing they had arrested the killer. What stood out, however, was that the statement referred to the perpetrator in the singular, ignoring all the questions about the possibility of accomplices. They didn't mention the ambulance, the markings found on the houses, or even the real motives behind the massacre. But had the case really been solved? Some felt the official announcement was just an attempt to calm the public, while the truth remained hidden somewhere. The police concluded that the perpetrator suffered from severe psychological disorders, but was also highly intelligent, which allowed him to carry out his crimes with precision without leaving a trace. All the evidence pointed to the killer being a local who knew the village and the victims well. It was impossible for an outsider to enter and exit so easily without raising suspicions or leaving any trace. Based on this, a wide campaign was launched to identify all individuals known to suffer from psychological disorders, narrowing the list down to 300 suspects. The first had previously attempted to kill his sister in her sleep. The second suffered from auditory and visual hallucinations, claiming to receive orders from the heaven. The third had a history of sexual assaults and had even attempted to rape a child. The police placed all three under surveillance, but there was no concrete evidence against any of them until a strange shoe was found in one of the victims' homes. It didn't belong to any family member. The matching shoe was found in the home of the third suspect, Muhammad Ali Abdulatif. When questioned, it became clear that Muhammad suffered from severe depression, paranoia, obsessive-compulsive disorder, hallucinations, and had stopped taking his medication 2 weeks prior. Investigations also revealed that in February 2005, he had broken into the home of one of the victims and attempted to assault his wife. However, the husband had kept the incident quiet out of fear of scandal. This wasn't the only incident. Muhammad had also tried to climb into another house, but was caught by the villagers who nearly killed him. His father intervened, claiming, "My son is mentally ill and can't be held accountable for his actions." What's striking is that the reconciliation meeting held at the time was attended by 3 men who later became victims of the massacre. 1. Taha, who was killed alongside his uncle. 2. Muhammad, the father of the 2 murdered girls. 3. Yahya, the father of Muhammad Yahya, the student who discovered the crime. All these threats led the police to tighten the noose around Muhammad, who eventually confessed to the crime and even reenacted it in detail before the prosecution. However, this is where the doubts started piling up. Muhammad's lawyer pointed out major inconsistencies in the investigation. He highlighted that the forensic report revealed details that contradicted the prosecution's narrative. The report indicated that the method of execution and the wounds of the victims required a high level of medical skill, which didn't align with Muhammad's capabilities. Additionally, the psychological evaluation showed that Muhammad wasn't mentally unstable as the police had claimed, but rather had limited intelligence, raising questions about his ability to plan and execute such a precise crime. It also didn't make any sense that one person without any training or experience could kill so many victims with such speed and precision, especially without significant resistance. Moreover, the evidence found at the crime scene didn't match Muhammad. The shoe, which the police had used as a key piece of evidence, was found on the roof of one of the houses and didn't belong to him. At the time, the police faced accusations of extracting Muhammad's confession under torture. His family came forward, stating that he had been subjected to intense pressure for 5 consecutive days, during which he was physically and psychologically tortured and forced to confess to the massacre. The threats didn't stop there. His family was directly threatened, pushing him to comply with the demands. Not only that, but Muhammad also coached on how how to reenact the crime in the court to make his confession appear realistic and convincing. All of this was allegedly done to quickly close the case and quell the public outrage that was putting immense pressure on the authorities. In a shocking turn of events, the court acquitted Muhammad due to insufficient evidence. When the verdict was announced, it hit the people in the village like a thunderbolt. They remained convinced that he was the real killer, fearing the angry backlash from the villagers. Muhammad was relocated to the UAE, where he lived far from his way town and away from the media. Years later, the late journalist Wael al-Abrashi coincidentally met Muhammad in the UAE and conducted an interview with him. In the interview, Muhammad revealed the details of what had happened, confirming that he had been tortured, threatened into confessing to a crime he didn't commit. Despite 20 years passing since the massacre, the case remains shrouded in mystery. To this day, no one knows who the real killer is or why this horrific crime was committed. Even today, after so many years, the Beni Mazar massacre remains a dark, unsolved mystery. Who committed this heinous crime and why? Was it a single killer or an organized group? How was there no trace left behind? Was it just a random act of violence? Or were there hidden secrets no one wanted to uncover? Why did the police rush to close the case? And why was Muhammad tortured and forced to confess? And if he wasn't the killer, who carried out this massacre with such precision and brutality? Here, even more terrifying questions arise. Was this crime linked to occult practices? Were the victims offered as sacrifices in some dark ritual? Why the pigeons were found next to each body? Was it just a coincidence? Or did it have a hidden meaning? Or was it something deeper, perhaps connected to the organ trafficking that was rampant at the time? If so, who was behind it? And where did the fake paramedics who visited the village? So many questions, but no answers. Some believe the perpetrator wasn't an ordinary person, but a powerful entity and influence that prevents the truth from coming to the light. Others think certain clues were deliberately erased to protect the real killer. So will the killer ever be revealed? Or will this mystery remain unsolved forever? What do you think, guys? I'm waiting for your thoughts and theories in the comments. This was today's video, and I'll see you in the next one.